is what flows in this fam's DNA. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to Dope Interviews, brought to you by the Mighty 19 Media Group. I'm your host, Warren Shaw. And as always, rate, review, subscribe, do all of those great things for Dope Interviews and everything on the 19 Media Group platform. Don't forget, as always, to tap in with our folks over at Rich Kid Clothing for their continued love and support of the 19 Media brand here through their great website and amazing apparel and clothes that they have. But as always, you know, we got to pay those bills. So that's out of the way. Now I got to get to this week's guest. I met this brother in the throes of the Las Vegas summer heat this past summer, but not in the way that many may think. It was a very classy event hosted by the National Basketball Players Association. And he's here to discuss with us his amazing app that is definitely out here trying to help people. He's the CEO, founder of Joyfully, an app that connects professionals dealing with isolation to uplifters. I love that terminology. We'll talk about that in a little bit. To uplifters who understand the world they live in, so that they feel empowered to be their best selves inside and outside of work. It's my guy, Mark Bishop. Mark, what's good, family? How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Warren. Thank you for having me on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh man, I'm really excited we got an opportunity to do this. So, truth be told, you know, we don't pull punches here on Dope Interviews. As I said in the intro, you know, met you out here in the summer league. We just got to talking, and you know, I found what you were doing in this space extremely interesting. And what we do here on Dope Interviews is really we want to just highlight good stories, man, just people who are doing the good work, doing, you know, the people's work out here. And I think what you're bringing with Joyfully is definitely that. So I want to obviously get into the crux of this application and, you know, why you started it as well. But we always start from the very beginning. So kind of give me, you know, kind of like the Cliff Notes version of kind of your origin story, you know what I mean, how you grew up and kind of like pursuing this career path.
Absolutely, man. So where should I start? Right. I grew up in New Jersey, just like 45 minutes outside of New York City. You know, single mom, child of single mom. I know you are as well, just from hearing other interviews. Yeah. But, you know, my father was also very strong in our lives, too. Shout out to my dad. He's from Barbados. My mother's African-American. My mother's a French teacher, public school French teacher. And we were fortunate in ninth grade where she won a Fulbright grant. So we basically, my mom, my little brother, and I all got to move to France for a year when I was in ninth grade. Wow. I didn't speak any French, didn't know anybody out there. You know what I'm saying? I had no understanding of what it was going to be like. But being there and going through that experience of, you know, that not being my native language and needing to make friends because that's so important when you're a kid. I think it taught me a lot as far as humility, but also taught me a lot about just, you know, how to relate to people, even when you're cross cultures. So then when I came back here to the States, you know, went to Rutgers University, interned mostly in finance and in business, worked for a while in corporate America. And that finally brought me to where I am now. And I feel like I'm in the right place now with Joyfully.
Oh, man, I love that. You know, and I find when I talk to people, you know, whether it being on interview or on camera or off, people who've had a foreign experience for whatever the reason that brought them overseas, so to speak, from the continental US, they just have a different perspective. I mean, it really does give you some vision and some insight into, you know, kind of like the human approach into it. And you touched on something too that, you know, that I think speaks to your app, because you said you went over there and like, hey, you needed to make friends. And, you know, I mean, part of this too is like, you know, trying to, I don't want to be so broad as to say, but to help, you know, with loneliness, if you will. I don't think it can cure it, so to speak, but definitely to help, you know what I mean, to give that as well too. So that fact that you have that experience is pretty amazing. Well, so we'll touch on that a little bit later as well too. So I just want to, you know, so you Rutgers, the whole situation there, was app development kind of the plan after you decided maybe the rat race wasn't for you?
Oh, yes, very much so. You know, the first, I started my first company when I used to drive, I was an ice cream truck driver. So my first company I had, so it's not app development at all, but entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
So early on, you know, I was interning at Ernst & Young in New York City, Monday to Friday. And then on the weekends, I was in Jersey driving the ice cream truck around, right? And then I, you know, hired friends and things like this as well. So, you know, entrepreneurship was definitely what the what the goal always was. It came to app development very serendipitously, with how that all came together, just by being around the right people. I always had the ideas, but I was very fortunate to be around the right people to make those ideas come to fruition.
Yeah, mentorship is a major thing, I think within our communities, and something you have to have people who believe in you as well too. And sometimes you need those haters as well. You
Yeah,
need to kind of fuel you, in the positive direction. So how did the concept of joyfully actually kind of come to be from your ideation?
absolutely. Yeah. So what I did starting off, my first kind of dealing with apps and app development, and that ultimately led me to Joyfully, was my first company, which was called Afro Roots DNA.
Say it
So
again.
Afro, oh, it's called Afro Roots DNA,
Gotcha.
was the
Yep.
first company that I started. So Afro Roots DNA, that's the first like consumer tech company I started. So what that did was basically it helped African Americans find out what tribe we come from in Africa by doing a DNA test. But the app part came in because we would show you a map, and then instead of just saying like, you're from this tribe or that tribe, we're actually giving you a whole percentage, and then you can click on the map in Africa and see which where the tribes you're a member of, where they are, history about them, and all that type of
Man.
stuff. So that was the first company I started, and I did that while I was working full time at Bloomberg, a major financial company in New York City. Um, so having that experience, there's a whole lot that goes into it. You know what I mean? As you can imagine, for lack of a better word, it kind of blew up. Doing that company became pretty popular because that's such an important endeavor. Just the fact that we don't know where we're from, and
For
that's
sure.
by design. So, having talked to so many customers and people that were interested in doing, podcast interviews, things like this, I realized through that experience that, there's a big mental health aspect to it. Like, it's unfair that we don't know where we come from, and it's unfair that, you know when you look at like the economic statistics, black folks and people of color tend to be towards the bottom rungs, and when it comes to like the highest paid jobs, we're at the lower end as far as like we don't work in those jobs typically, and we are overemployed in the roles that tend to pay the least.
Yeah.
So I thought about what are the solutions out there for us when it comes to a mental health standpoint. What's going to keep us in mind? What solutions are out there that will keep us in mind? So what I did, I kind of had that idea and that thinking, that line of thinking. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet, and I got a job working at the largest Black-owned dating app, working as a product manager there. So I worked there for about a year and some change, and then I actually recently put my tweak notice in. Kind of a little shout out to that, but um, what I kind of turned that all into after learning what was kind of out there, what other kind of mental health solutions are out there. I realized that there's something fundamentally that's missing, and that's just the connection, right? Like the opportunity to connect with somebody genuinely that has something in common with you.
Mhm.
Was it 1 out of every 3 Americans deal with loneliness every single day? Like they basically just don't have people to talk to. They don't feel like they can be their natural self. So with my experience in tech and my experience with making solutions for Black folks and just for people that are kind of counted out, um, that was where the idea for Joyfully came from, and I built a dope team.
Man. So I'm paying attention here, Mark, because
Mhm.
I see how you've basically put pieces of your experiences and your life into practice into this as well too. Even go back to your first answer, hey, going overseas and finding a need to make friends, now working at a dating app, and dating apps are a lot of times for people who can't relate and find people in the
Yeah,
quote unquote real world. So they
yeah,
use so see what you did here. I see what you did there, and I can really appreciate that, because that's how that you believe in the product, and you've kind of like worked in different areas of markets to kind of make it come to life. Um,
thank you.
One of the things I always ask people who are in entrepreneurship and create situations like the one that you have is just what's in the name. So how did that? I mean, the concept is one thing, but why
Mhm.
call it joyfully?
Wow, great question. Great question. If I'm being honest, I am a big fan. So speaking of dope interviews, I'm someone who loves listening to conversations and hearing other experts basically talk about what their experiences were, how they kind of came about doing things. And I listened to a lot of podcasts as a result, a lot of interview podcasts.
Mm.
And I just told you earlier how I've listened to several episodes of Dope Interviews as well. And the kind of the name for Joyfully, it came from my admiration for the founder of Calendly.
Mm.
So is a brother named Tope is his first name. I don't want to mispronounce his last name. But Calendly is an app that I use all the time.
Yep.
Millions of people use it, right? It's a way of kind of scheduling appointments. And I listened to his podcast episode where he was interviewed on, I think it was How I Built This. And he talked about his life story and everything he'd been through. And he used to have the same job that I used to have at Bloomberg before he even started Calendly. He was working in a sales position. And he just talked about the story of, finally building Calendly. And honestly, it was kind of like an homage to those consumer apps that they a lot of them have that like Lee name at the end. And my thought was, when you're dealing with, I guess the core problem with Joyfully that we're solving is, and it speaks to kind of how I came up with it as well. When you are going through a tough time, right, like depression, you're dealing with a really hard experience mentally, right, and everybody else around you is living their best lives. You go on Instagram, you go on any social media, they're just showing you the highlight reel. So you're the only one, it feels like, that's going through something bad. You're the only one who's struggling and trying to get by. The question that I fundamentally had was, who do you talk to? Who do you go to? And how do you want to feel? Well, to me, I want to feel joyful, right? And
Yeah.
that's that's basically on where the name came from.
Yeah, well, I really do appreciate you sharing that. And, any brand you're worth its salt is going to think about every aspect, kind of soup to nuts, if you will, line by line of all the things. And, to think that intently about how the brand should be represented, I think is a great masterstroke kind of on your behalf. So we've talked a little bit about how it came about, talk about the name. So let's just talk, point blank, how does it work? Walk me
Yeah.
through kind of like the basis of it if I were to download it onto my phone and kind of like, all right, what do I do from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is basically we want to center it around getting to know you, right? We want the app to kind of get to know you a little bit so that way we actually match you up to someone who really understands. So before I walk through like the exact step-by-step process of how it all works, I might as well explain a little bit about kind of the context. So the question I asked earlier, which is like when you're going through a tough time or you feel isolated and that you don't have people around you that you can really relate to and everyone else is living their best lives, who do you talk to? Well, the concept of an uplifter came to me when I thought about how, living in Brooklyn, New York, you get off the subway or, I know you're in South Florida, you go to any high foot traffic area, whether it's, the mall or, anywhere on Las Olas Boulevard over there in Fort Lauderdale, right?
Yep.
Think about the people you pass by every day, right? Most of the time you don't really interact with them, but think about it. We all have issues. We all have problems that we don't know the answers to. And we may not have anybody in our corner that can help us answer those questions. We have friends, right? A lot of us have friends, but even our friendships are put in context because the same friend who I watch sports with may not be the same friend I go to when I'm going through an issue with my relationship.
Yep.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So the concept for this is, we want to create a judgment-free way for you to have somebody to talk to who can definitely relate to you on the topic that you want to speak about, because a lot of times we don't have that, right? We don't have those people that we can just call up and ask a question, that can speak to a topic that's like an expert, so to speak. And so what we say at Joyfully is that everybody is an expert in something. Everybody is an expert in their own lived experience, whether it's cooking or you're into sports or you've been through depression before and you've overcome it, or you've traveled to a new city and moved there and you didn't know anybody there. We all have stories of things that we've accomplished, that we've done, no matter what your education level is, no matter what your professional level is. And so the concept of uplifters is we basically take everyday people and we put them through our training. We teach them to use their lived experiences to help relate to other people who are dealing with loneliness. So within the app, the way that perpetuates itself is a user comes in, we ask them a few questions about themselves, gender, age, these types of like things like that. And then finally we'll ask them, what brought you here today? And there's a number of questions that go from there. We'll lead them down a few different directions. And then finally, what happens is they get matched to an uplifter who we believe is the best match for them. And again, we have some phenomenal uplifters on there, but anybody could be an uplifter, because the idea is, yeah, sure. Typically what you do is you might go to a therapist to talk to them, or you might go to a life coach or something like this.
Yeah.
But that's pretty expensive, right? It costs a lot of money. And also you might not even find the right person. I've been in therapy, and you might pay upwards of $200 if you can even get those appointments, if you even have health insurance. And then by the end of $200, you realize, you know what, this person doesn't even understand who I am fundamentally. So we want to do that from day one and make that quick and easy. And that's how the process works on the app.
So you touched on that too, because I mean, hey, let's be honest, and we don't pull punches. So is the app free, or is it a subscription based situation?
Yeah. So the app right now, we're in a private beta phase. I do want to call that out, that it's actually a mobile web app right now. So you can access
Okay.
it by going to our website and then joining the wait list. We have a special wait list set up for anybody watching this interview right now. If you go to joinjoyfully.com/dope interviews, you can join the wait list and kind of get ahead of the line on over there.
My
Or if you're
guy.
interested, absolutely, man, come on, absolutely, I'm a big supporter. So as far as the payments right now, it's totally free. We wanted to basically just add value and help people out. But ultimately, when it comes to like the money side of it, because obviously, look, we have to pay uplifters. We have to, money makes the world go around, right?
100%.
But my idea from the very beginning has been, I don't want this to be another app that is inaccessible for people. You think so?
I know
I
what you
came up with
mean.
the idea. Yeah, man, like there's so many things in this world that we already have to pay for. So many things are competing for your wallet as it is. And with things like inflation, with things like people getting laid off from their jobs, like we see right now with the economy, I don't want people to be excluded from this. I want this to be something that's inclusive. So, whether we do a subscription or we do like a pay per use type thing, it's going to be something that's available, and there'll be tiers. But we'll always make sure that we have something that's suitable for people who might kind of need to um, hold on to the money a little bit tighter. So that being said, very, very low price point once we do start charging, but right now it's totally free.
I love that. We are talking with the great Mark Bishop here, CEO and founder of Joyfully. Let's take a quick break, y'all, and continue this great conversation here, Dope Interviews with Mark Bishop. We'll be right back.
This awesome show that you are listening to is sponsored by Rich Kid Money Bear Clothing. The Bronx-based company represents 1990s streetwear with a modern twist. Rich Kid offers high-end quality clothing at reasonable prices. They have t-shirts, hoodies, sweatsuits, and more for men, women, and kids like me. You can check them out at richkidmoneybear.com, and you can use the code 19media for a 15% discount. Okay, back to the show. And as always, this is a 19 Media Group presentation.
And we're back with Mark Bishop here. Man, great conversation. So as we're talking a little bit about what this app can do and the importance of it, even in my full-time work, I work kind of in the recreation and health and wellness space. And I was giving a presentation, ironically, not too long ago. And one of the slides on the presentation was talking about the stigma, if you will, of mental health, and almost like the perceived stigma, because the stigma really is I feel like I'm going to be judged, but I wouldn't actually judge somebody who was getting the mental health. So it's a really interesting thing because, it's almost like an oxymoron. Like, I wouldn't judge you, but I feel like you're going to judge me. Mm-hmm. And it really isn't that situation. So I feel like what you're doing here is like so right on time, in terms of trying to combat loneliness, if you will. And you talked a little bit before the break about the uplifters. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you like this kind of one follow-up question. Do I have the ability to change? I connect with somebody, Mark becomes my uplifter, I'm like, oh, Mark is all right, but mm-hmm. Maybe he's not for me, so to speak. Yeah. So is there ability for the person to maybe kind of find another uplifter that might make more sense for them?
Absolutely. We not only do we let you change, but in just 3 taps, you can change to another uplifter from within the app. Right. So just tap 3 times and you can get a completely different person. And that is very different from similar apps that are out there. When it comes to these major mental health apps that you'd have to use, like BetterHelp or Talkspace, et cetera, for instance, right? You have to wait probably 2 weeks or a week or so to even get your first appointment. And then to switch to another, either it's not possible or it's going to take you several days or up to a week or more. So the idea here is we want to help people quickly and give you someone to talk to quickly. So yeah, it's a very quick process. And I do want to speak briefly just to the topic you brought up earlier about the stigma. You know, that's very much something that I myself struggled with, right? I had in the past friends and even like romantic partners who saw what I was dealing with and saw what I've been going through, and I was depressed at the time, but I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what the name of that was.
Mm.
And they told me, you know, you should go to a therapist. You need to talk to someone about what you're dealing with. And Warren, I was so closed off from that. I did not want to sit down in somebody's chair opening up about my secrets and, you know, what am I going to benefit out of that? I'm sharing all this information with them. And I would say that that's not unique. That's something that so many people of color, so many men as well, basically deal with. They don't want to open up on certain topics. You know, when you're around certain guys, right, and they're going through something, you could say, I could tell that something's off. Like, are you okay?
Right.
It's just the answer is just yeah, I'm fine, right? So what we want to do and what the goal is with this, one of the goals of this is to just make this be a low barrier, like a low obstacle option to get you just in the habit of talking about what you're dealing with, right? And we do it, it's totally anonymous. No contact information gets shared. And you get to talk to someone who actually understands where you're coming from, which is not the case with therapy or the other options that are out there.
I think that's an amazing point. And I know so many people who have been helped and feel so much better about just the direction of their life, and so to speak, just by tapping into that resource, and like you said, dispelling those myths and those stigmas that if you're of a certain age group, so to speak, maybe growing up it was like, oh, we don't do that or whatever, you know what I mean? And I think even as we talked about friend groups earlier, there's certain friend groups I wouldn't dare let them know how I'm really feeling about something, because they're going to laugh at me and I'm going to feel worse about it. So, I'm laughing now. I mean, it's a serious situation, but I mean, I think we all can relate, to what it is. We know, who we can go to for certain things and who we can't, maybe even more poignantly, as you're alluding to. So, and you touched a little bit earlier on, again, social media, and I had read something or saw something scrolling literally right before we got on, on, I think it was on the Revolt Instagram account. And it was like, I'm going to misquote it, so whatever it is, but it was something to the effect of like, oh, we're all suffering, but meanwhile, we're posting happy pictures. You know what I mean? And it really is kind of like the mantra of social media. Like, we're miserable in some ways. And maybe that's an oversimplification, but at the same time, we're only giving people what we want them to see, and I think what Joyfully can really do is really help us kind of get to the crux. Is there a number, or no, actually, let me back up. Do you have, it's in the beta right now as you're talking about like that, but do you have any testimonials or success stories that you can share? Like, and not without giving names, so to speak, but it's like, hey, you know what? I had one or two people, whatever the case may be, who was in this and felt like, hey, this has really made a difference for them.
Absolutely. We have that a lot of the time for uplifters right now, because I do want to note that, like, we are very early on. It's totally available in the private beta. So in a certain context, it's available, but we're keeping it very small for this rollout at first, so that it's something where we can actually make sure we're doing the right thing, fixing little issues before we avail it to everybody. So while we don't have user testimonials just yet, I have a meeting tomorrow actually where I'll be collecting a few of them for the first time. But what we have a lot of is uplifter testimonials, because what we've been able to do is there are so many people out here who maybe they want to be therapists one day, maybe they are interested in psychology, or they've just lived a very interesting life, but they don't get a chance to basically share their knowledge or their wisdom with people in the way that they would like to. So what we do is we basically give those people the opportunity to talk to folks who are going through something, to talk to people who are interested genuinely in hearing what they're going through. And look, a lot of us are extroverts anyway, right? And this whole remote world. It's beautiful for many reasons. I'm sure that, we all enjoy it. Like we went in Vegas, for instance, that
Mm.
was, it's a good example of this remote environment and all the things that it avails to us. But also it's for a lot of people, for like remote workers, for instance, the biggest complaint that they have, their biggest struggle is loneliness, because you're not, you can fall into a routine where you're really just seeing the same people over and over again, whether it's your romantic partner, whether it's, maybe your neighbor
Yeah.
and the people at the grocery store, and that's it. So what we've done for uplifters and the testimonials that we've gotten have been mostly from them, just basically speaking about how this has given them a chance to meet new people, to engage with people, to help, to feel like they can help while doing it from their phone. They don't need to go anywhere or do anything crazy to do so.
That's dope. Really is truly dope. One of the things, and I'm corny, man. I know what it is. I'm not even going front. I'm a corny dude. Like I really do believe in like looking in the mirror and saying, hey, did you do something good today? And do you feel like you helped somebody today?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really, I had to take a hard look at myself at some point too, because I was like, I've been lucky, to get some accolades and things like that here and there for various things that I've been involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And I really said, you know what, it was about me, but it wasn't at the same time. I said, I was fulfilled. My cup was filled by a result of me helping somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of like what it boils down to. So it sounds like in some ways, even for the uplifters that you're, empowering on your platform, it's like, hey, they have knowledge, they have stories, they have wealth that they can share with people, and that allows them to feel good about themselves. It really is kind of like this give and take that is really natural and amazing to kind of see and experience if you're a part of it. So am I assessing that correctly?
Oh, you absolutely are, and it's a blessing to be able to help people in that way from the uplifter side, but also to be able to for these users to have, for people who use the app to basically have the opportunity to interact with somebody. It's like I could tell you could tell basically how helpful it is and how people really need this type of service. So yeah, it's that give and take, as you just said.
Oh man. So all right. I'm there. I'm gonna blow this up, man. I'm gonna tell everybody about this situation. So for you, is there a number of users that you ultimately want to see, or is there a possibility of being too big? Because then maybe you don't have the right infrastructure and the right uplifters, to kind of connect. Because again, sometimes people scale and they'll scale too fast, and it's about growth and it's about growth. And well, the crux of it is to really help people. Can you do that if you're too big?
Great question. I think that as long as we're providing actual value for people, it can be big, right? Because think about it. We all, a lot of us, go to work, right? We go out there and we do whatever our experiences, whether it's teacher or working in education, like you do, or working in sports or whatever industries it is that we work in. Some of us just happen to be more socially adept or more comfortable being like outgoing than other people are. And here's a fact that I learned that surprised me a lot. 1 out of every 5 millennials have no friends at all, right? So 20% of millennials have no friends whatsoever. And Gen Z is like the loneliest generation in America, according to some surveys. So there are millions of people out here. If 1/3 of Americans deal with loneliness every day, that's 130 million people that every day wish that they had someone to talk to. They wish that they could connect to somebody who understands them. That's a major, huge number, right? And loneliness has so many impacts on your mental health and everything. It's actually one of the leading factors to depression and anxiety, and we're already in a state where, there aren't enough therapists out there to talk to the people who right now need therapy, right? Loneliness, I think, we see it as like a silent epidemic and it's only going to make that discrepancy worse when it comes to the amount of people who need therapy versus the amount of people who are able to offer those services. And so that number can be huge. And also, I believe that there are, you know, 2/3 of Americans who don't deal with loneliness, right? So there are so many people out there who are willing to help out with other people, who are
True.
more comfortable to be able to do that. So do I think it's going to be, you know, like 130 million people using it? I mean, hey, that would be cool. I don't necessarily have that number in mind right now, Warren. I just want to make sure that while we're here, while we're small, and as we grow, that we continue to actually drive value for people and that we actually make a difference for people. That's really what the idea is for me.
Well, I think you're definitely on the right path. I know you're on the right path, and you are going to continue to help so many people out there, you know, with this amazing platform. I love the fact that we met, man. I really do. And, you know, it's just kind of one of those situations. I almost didn't go to that party or that gathering. Almost didn't go.
Wow.
But, you know, it's ironic that it allows us to, because I was literally leaving and heading to the airport that day. So, you know, I was kind of trying to take it easy, but we decided to go and, you know, we kind of crossed paths. And I think, you know, this is an amazing situation. Is there any last things you can say about the platform and like kind of like where you want it to grow ultimately? Anybody you maybe wanted to connect to? Because, you know, obviously we know this is an influencer world now, and, you know, and celebrity endorsements and things of that nature. Or do you feel like that would be cheating the process in any capacity?
No, like, let's be honest. People pay a lot of attention to the folks that they admire, to the folks that they look up to, whether that's an athlete, whether it's somebody in media, whether it's somebody who's behind the scenes in the media world. People care about those types of things. So for me, I'm open, and we want to connect with anybody who's passionate about mental health or who just cares about mental health. You know, what we're doing right now is we're providing value for people who a lot of people don't really think about. We're solving an issue that is definitely not thought about or not addressed much, not even talked about sometimes in conversations. How often do people say, "Hey, I'm lonely right now"? We don't say it necessarily in conversation, but 1/3 of Americans deal with it every single day. So, yeah, obviously, you know, DMs are definitely open and all of that. We want to collaborate with anybody out there who's passionate about the space. And Warren, one last thing I would like to say on the topic of, you know, this whole trip to Vegas. I want to just commend you and your partner, your lady, because, you know, I even talked about you guys with my lady a couple weeks ago. Just that bond that you guys have and that relationship. You guys have something very beautiful together. So, you know, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you as well.
Thank you, brother. That's love. That's love. He is the CEO and founder of Joyfully. Make sure you check them out at joinjoyfully.com. That same handle on social media as well. Man, Mark, before we let you slide out of here, tell the people what you surprised me with if they want to join the beta and, you know, a little special code, man. Tell them again one more time before we sign out of here.
Absolutely. It's joinjoyfully.com/dope interviews. For anybody in the audience, we want to make sure we put you at the top of the waiting list. And if you are interested in becoming an uplifter, there's a button in there as well for you on the same page. So, you know, we love to connect with you, and you guys can get a chance to interview with me or one of the members of our team.
Beautiful. Please join Joyfully. Do it now. Do it ASAP and rock out with dope interviews. Again, he is the man, the CEO and founder of Join Joyfully. Thanks so much for being with us, Mark. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at @dope_interviews or at Shaw Sports NBA if you're so inclined for my basketball content. Hit up everything on the 19 Media Group platform. Make sure you're staying tapped in with Rich Kid Clothing. And you know what time it is, what time it was. That's my guy, Mark Bishop. And this has been another dope interview. And we're out.
Together we stand, divided we never. The vision is one, striving for the better. Working as a team, working toward a dream. It's not even work when the team is the dream. On a united front, we got our own back. A band of brothers to counteract any attack. One heart in fact, forget what the blood say. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. So let's do it for the love, give to the max. Listen to opinion, but react to facts. And remember that together with a but separate, just pieces of it. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA.
Family represent like a tree with names on it. We're free, no chains on it. Relieved, the pain's gone, I can see. We come together like questions on the quiz. Mojo Flow and Viz, man, you know what it is. And if ignorance is bliss, you're gonna hate this lesson. Organized intellect like a tropical depression. My symbol is the cross, a mic and ghost peppers. Cause I'm just a black sheep growing up to be a shepherd. Moonlighting as a weapon to protect the children. Every brother is a father, dynasties we're building. Max, J and K, Bay, and Isaiah, next level of the family foundation, understand me?